Tourism is meant to be about adventure and discovery, an escape from the ordinary, a chance to explore the world. But sometimes it ends in tragedy. In this video, we'll explore 5 real stories of the worst deaths in the history of tourism. Incidents where dream vacations turned into chilling disasters, and lives were lost in the most shocking and unforgettable ways.
I can't hold my breath long enough to tell you everything I love about you. Will you please be my wife? That's when something went wrong. Weber swims away and he never resurfaces.
It was September 19th, 2019 in Tanzania. 40-year-old Stephen Weber Jr. from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was on a once-in-a-lifetime vacation with his girlfriend, Kenesha Antoine. They had chosen the stunning Manta Resort, an exclusive escape off the coast of Pemba Island. Their room wasn't just oceanfront, it was underwater. A glass-walled cabin submerged beneath the sea, surrounded by marine life, like something out of a dream. It cost $1,700 a night, but for Stephen, this was more than a luxury trip. It was a love story reaching its most beautiful chapter. He had something planned, something unforgettable. For 2 years, Stephen and Kenesha had shared adventures, laughter, and love. And here, beneath the Indian Ocean, he was ready to take the next step. He prepared a handwritten note, carefully sealed in a plastic bag. Alongside it, an engagement ring. His plan was simple, yet bold. Swim outside the submerged suite, hold the message up to the glass, and propose through the window. It would be romantic, intimate, perfect. And for a brief, shining moment it was. Kenesha stood inside the room, filming the moment with excitement bubbling in her voice. Through the window, she saw Stephen swimming toward her, smiling, laughing. He held up the note. On one side, a message. He couldn't hold his breath long enough to say everything he loved about her, but what he did love only grew each day. Then he flipped it. The proposal. Will you marry me? Finally, he reached for the ring, showing it through the glass, his expression full of joy. Then, he was gone. Stephen swam out of view, presumably to head back to the surface. Kenesha waited, smiling, excited, but seconds turned into minutes, and the joy slowly twisted into fear. Stephen never came back up. Panic set in. Kenesha called out, tried the radio, the phone, nothing. Frantic, she flagged down passing boaters for help. When staff finally arrived and searched the water, they found Stephen, but it was too late. He was unconscious, barely clinging to life. Despite desperate efforts to resuscitate him, he was pronounced dead not long after being pulled from the ocean. He never got to hear her answer, but it was yes. 1,000 times, yes. In the days that followed, Kenesha posted a heartbreaking tribute online. Her words were filled with pain, disbelief, and love. She called him a beautiful soul. She shared how they had laughed just hours before, how Stephen had told her he felt lucky to be experiencing such a magical place with her. He was grateful. He was in love. And then he was gone. But for Stephen's family, grief quickly tangled with confusion. He had been a strong swimmer, experienced, adventurous. Why didn't he make it back? What went wrong? His sister, Mandy Hoffman, raised the same questions publicly. Could there have been a hidden danger, a medical issue, a delay in rescue? The Manta Resort issued a statement calling it a tragic accident. Conditions were calm, the water about 10 meters deep. He had been free diving alone, but for the people left behind, that wasn't enough. How does a moment so filled with joy end like this? The resort's CEO expressed sorrow, but the truth is no one had answers, only loss and silence. Stephen's death rocked everyone who knew him. Friends remembered his joy, his energy, the way he made people feel seen, loved. A GoFundMe was set up to help bring his body home. It raised over $177,000. Even the U.S. State Department stepped in to assist. But the mystery remains. Why didn't Stephen make it? Was it a breath misjudged? A sudden cramp? Something that could have been prevented? His family still doesn't know. They probably never will. But what they do know is this. Stephen Weber Jr. died trying to give the woman he loved the most unforgettable proposal of her life. It was November 16th, 2018. 26-year-old John Allen Chow had spent years preparing for this moment. A devoted American missionary, he believed his life had one purpose: to bring the word of God to one of the most isolated communities on earth, the Sentinelese tribe. They lived on North Sentinel Island, tucked into India's Andaman chain. Untouched by modern civilization, the Sentinelese had rejected contact for thousands of years. They didn't want help. They didn't want technology. They didn't want God. What they did want was to be left alone, but John couldn't walk away. He believed this was his calling. He had visited the Andaman Islands before in 2015 and 2016 studying, preparing, but this time he wouldn't watch from a distance. He would step onto their land. Despite strict Indian laws banning contact with the Sentinelese, John hired local fishermen for $325 to take him near the island under the cover of night. They were hesitant. They knew what had happened to others who tried, but John's faith was unwavering. On November 15th, he made his first approach by kayak. The fisherman stayed back as he paddled toward shore. "My name is John. I love you, and Jesus loves you," he called out. The tribe didn't wave. They raised their bows. Still, John offered a fish, a peace gesture. Arrows flew. He turned and paddled back, heart pounding. That night, he wrote in his journal. He admitted fear. He wondered if he should leave. But then he wrote, "I think I could die." And later, "Lord, is this island Satan's last stronghold?" But he wasn't done. The next morning he returned with more gifts, a football, more fish, more hope. But again, he was met with hostility. That night he left a letter to his family. It was a farewell. He told them not to be angry, not at the tribe, not at God. He said he loved them and asked for forgiveness if he didn't return. November 16th, his final attempt. He paddled toward the island. No camera, no protection, just his Bible and conviction. The fishermen stayed back, barely able to see, and then they saw him fall. He was struck by arrows, dragged into the trees. His body vanished into the jungle. The fishermen fled. Back on the mainland, they reported what they had seen. Indian authorities confirmed his death, but made a difficult choice. His body would not be recovered. To return risked violence, or exposing the tribe to deadly diseases. The world erupted. Some saw John as a martyr. Others called his actions reckless, an act of dangerous arrogance that could have devastated the tribe. Survival International condemned his mission. The Sentinelese, they argued, had survived because of their isolation and had every right to resist intrusion. John's family didn't lash out. They forgave those who killed him and stood by his beliefs. Still, tough questions lingered. Was this a tragedy of faith or a cautionary tale of cultural blindness? When does conviction become a violation? The fishermen were arrested for helping him. The Sentinelese, untouched by the law, were left alone, just as they had always wanted. Indian officials made it clear. The tribe acted in defense of their home. Years later, the debate lives on. Some say John Allen Chow died a hero. Others believe he should have never gone. It was November 27th, 2022, in San Andres, Colombia, a Caribbean paradise. 26-year-old Natalia Andrea Lagares Fajardo had traveled there from her hometown of Cali, eager to soak in the warmth, the waves, and the magic of a long-awaited escape with friends. She loved the ocean. Natalia was glowing with joy. She had spent the morning lounging on Whitewater Beach, one of the island's most popular and picturesque spots. Later, she and her friends boarded a boat to explore the coastline, laughing, dancing, taking pictures, wrapped in the easy bliss of vacation. The skies were clear. The sea was calm. No one could have imagined how quickly it would all unravel. As the boat returned to the beach, something small caught Natalia's attention. Her flip-flops had slipped off into the water, a minor inconvenience. Most people wouldn't hesitate. Neither did she. Without thinking twice, Natalia jumped in to retrieve them. She didn't know. None of them did. Just nearby, another boat was moving through the water. It was carrying 24 tourists and 2 crew members. Its engine was still running. The propeller was spinning beneath the surface, silent. Natalia swam toward her flip-flops, unaware of the danger just feet away. In the next breath, it happened. The boat's propeller struck her. The water erupted into chaos, screams, shouting, blood. Witnesses stood frozen as the turquoise waves turned red. Natalia had been hit with terrifying force. Her legs, lower back, and hips were severely injured. The water that had once felt like freedom had suddenly become a trap. Her friends pulled her from the sea in a panic. She was barely conscious. Desperate for help, they rushed her onto a jet ski to get her to the hospital as fast as possible. Every second mattered. By 5:30 p.m., she arrived at the Departmental Hospital of San Andres. Doctors worked frantically, performing blood transfusions, emergency surgeries, doing everything they could to save her. Natalia went into cardiac arrest. For a moment, they brought her back, but her body was too broken. By the early hours of November 28th, Natalia's heart stopped again. And this time, it didn't start back up. Just like that, The trip she had so joyfully anticipated ended in the most unthinkable way. She was gone. In the days that followed, shock turned into sorrow. Colombian maritime authorities immediately immobilized the boat involved. The 2 crew members were placed under investigation, standard protocol in a tragedy like this. Officials issued renewed warnings about water safety, urging swimmers to stay clear of boats and for crews to maintain strict awareness when passengers were in the water. But for those who knew Natalia, the rules came too late. Video footage from the beach surfaced online. Chaotic, gut-wrenching, showing the confusion and terror in real time. It spread like wildfire, igniting debate across social media and beyond. How could something so small, jumping into the water for a pair of sandals, turn into a fatal decision? And the tragedy didn't end there. Just months earlier, across the sea in the Florida Keys, 31-year-old Juan Carlos Escot Alvarez had jumped into the water to save his fiancée after she fell overboard during a fishing competition. She survived. He didn't. He was struck by a propeller, too. Suddenly, people began to realize these accidents weren't random. They were preventable. Authorities began pushing for stricter regulations. Safety organizations launched awareness campaigns. But for Natalia's loved ones, none of that could bring her back. Her last day had been filled with sunshine, laughter, and good friends. Photos from hours before the accident showed her with a drink in hand, smiling, alive. No one could have known those would be her final moments.
That breaking news is at Disney World. You're looking at the lake next to the Grand Floridian Hotel, where a 2-year-old boy was attacked and killed by an alligator.
It was Florida evening on June 14th, 2016. At Disney World's luxurious Grand Floridian Resort and Spa, the Graves family from Elkhorn, Nebraska was settling in for what should have been another magical night. They were on vacation, just like millions of families who dream of Disney, a place of joy, safety, imagination. 2-year-old Lane Thomas Graves was playing near the edge of the Seven Seas Lagoon. His big sister Ella was nearby. His parents, Matt and Melissa, were just a few feet away, watching as Disney's outdoor screening of Zootopia flickered across the night. Kids were laughing, families were relaxing. Nothing about that moment felt dangerous. And then everything changed. It was around 8:30 p.m., a time when most guests were winding down. But it was also when alligators become most active, silent, unpredictable, waiting. As Lane bent near the water's edge, a shadow moved beneath the surface. Then, without warning, an alligator estimated at 7 to 8 feet long lunged from the lagoon and seized him. The splash was deafening. His father, Matt, reacted instantly. He hurled himself into the water, adrenaline surging, trying to pry his little boy from the predator's grip. He fought, screamed, struggled against nature itself, but the alligator was too strong. In mere seconds, Lane was dragged into deeper water and vanished beneath the surface. What followed was a frantic, devastating search. Disney staff, local authorities, divers, and wildlife teams worked through the night. They combed the area tirelessly, but hope began to fade. And then, after 17 harrowing hours, divers found Lane's body, 6 feet underwater, just 15 yards from where he was taken. The autopsy confirmed what no parent should ever hear. Lane had drowned, his body bearing injuries from the attack. He hadn't wandered. He hadn't done anything wrong. He was just a curious toddler, taken in a blink. In the days that followed, grief swept the nation. People struggled to understand how this could have happened. At Disney, of all places, whispers turned into questions. Why weren't there clear warnings about alligators? Why did the signs only say no swimming? Why hadn't something been done sooner? It turned out guests had warned staff about alligators in the area before Lane's death, but no real action was taken. In response, Disney removed nearly 100 alligators from its properties, built barriers around the lagoon, and installed new signage warning of potential wildlife threats. But for the Graves family, the damage had already been done. And yet, in the face of unimaginable loss, Matt and Melissa Graves chose grace. They didn't sue. They didn't rage publicly. Instead, they channeled their pain into purpose. They created the Lane Thomas Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping families of children in need of organ transplants. It was their way of keeping Lane's light alive. Years have passed, but the memory of that night lingers. So many of us have stood near lakes, walked by water, let our children explore just a few feet ahead. What happened to Lane could have happened to anyone. And that's what makes this story so haunting. It wasn't a freak accident in some far-off wilderness. It was in the heart of the world's most famous theme park. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. But on July 25, 2019, 19-year-old Alana Cutland fell from the skies above Madagascar, plummeting 3,700 feet into the dense, unforgiving jungle. What began as a bold journey of research and discovery ended in one of the most baffling and heartbreaking tragedies in recent tourism history. Alana wasn't just another tourist. She was a brilliant second-year student at Cambridge University, studying natural sciences. Her passion for nature wasn't just academic, it was deeply personal. She dreamed of studying rare species and pushing the boundaries of what young minds could achieve. So when the opportunity came to travel alone to Madagascar to study a little-known species of crustaceans, she took it, funding the trip herself, determined to carve her own path. Those who knew her best described her as curious, courageous, and full of life. Bright-eyed, fiercely independent, and endlessly driven, Alana was the kind of young woman who chased dreams to the edges of the earth. But no one could have predicted what would unfold just 8 days into her research trip. Alone in the remote Anjahavi region, Alana's condition began to unravel. What started as subtle changes turned quickly into something more disturbing. She became paranoid, disoriented, and erratic. Her phone calls home were scattered and confused, her words barely making sense. Thousands of miles away, her family grew alarmed. Something was clearly wrong. They didn't know if it was the isolation, the environment, or the medication she was taking, but they knew she had to come home, fast. Her parents made urgent arrangements to fly her out. A small Cessna was chartered to take her from the isolated lodge to the capital city, where she could catch a flight back to England. On board the plane were just 3 people: the pilot, a trusted family friend named Ruth Johnson, and Alana. What happened next is almost too shocking to believe. Just minutes after takeoff, the nightmare began. Alana, visibly unwell, unbuckled her seatbelt and lunged for the door mid-flight. At 3,700 feet in the air, panic took over. Ruth and the pilot fought desperately to restrain her, pleading with her, holding her back. But she was frantic, overcome by something beyond reason, and in one terrifying moment, she broke free. She opened the door, and she fell. Silence followed. Stunned, deafening silence. The plane kept flying, but Alana was gone. Her body vanished into the thick jungle below. For days, search teams combed through unforgiving terrain, battling heat, wild animals, and impossible odds. Her family waited, helpless, from across the world. Eventually, it was a local tribe that found her remains, offering a sliver of closure in a story full of pain. But the questions only deepened. Why would a brilliant, level-headed young woman take such a sudden and horrifying action? Investigators looked closely at everything: her mental state, her medications, the conditions of her stay, and one clue stood out: doxycycline. The anti-malaria medication Alana had been prescribed is widely used, but in rare cases it can cause severe psychological side effects. Hallucinations, paranoia, even suicidal thoughts. Her family believes this was the trigger, a devastating reaction that spiraled out of control. Her uncle, Lester Riley, spoke openly after her death, saying Alana's last phone calls were completely incoherent. They were desperate to get her out, but by then, the damage may have already been done. And yet, this isn't just a story about a pill, or a plane, or a fall. It's about the silent pressure so many young travelers face. The weight of being far from home, the isolation of remote research, the fear of admitting something's wrong. Alana was passionate, but she was also alone. And in the end, her fight wasn't just against the physical danger around her, but the invisible battle within.